Welcome to Best Picture This, where it is always Oscar season. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian. In this show, we reevaluate every Best Picture nominee from the 21st century and decide whether to keep it or kick it from its Oscar pedestal.
By the way, have you seen where the Academy is eating lunch these days? Keep your specs on, Brian, will you? In 2005, the nominees for Best Picture were Good Night and Good Luck, Capote, Brokeback Mountain, Munich, and Crash. But before we wrap up this miniseries, we're going to dive down the seedy underworld of high school politics to get the drop on one more big release from the year. The movie, Brick. The director, Rian Johnson. Here's the trailer.
Brendan?
Emily?
I really screwed up.
Screwed up how?
The brick.
What?
I didn't know it was bad, but the pin's on it now. You gotta help me.
Slow down now. This isn't good. No. Emily said words I didn't know. Tell me if they catch.
Brick? No.
Tug?
Tug might be a drink, like milk and vodka.
Pin?
You know the kingpin.
Dope runner, right?
Big time. What are you gonna do?
She asked for my help. I just want to know she's okay.
So what's first?
I'm gonna start shaking things up.
So you didn't know this boy?
No, sir, never seen him.
And he just hit you?
They asked for my lunch money first. Good thing I brown bagged it. You're coming into a certain situation. It's twisted. I'm looking for Emily.
You left her.
Yeah, I did.
You better be sure you want to know what you want to know.
Complicated. Everyone's got their thing.
When the upper crust does shady deeds, they've got symbols so they can tell each other that word getting around.
Coffee and pie.
Coffee and pie? Oh, my.
Keep up with me now.
You got a cigarette?
I don't smoke.
I've seen you smoke.
I don't smoke cigarettes.
I thought we had orange juice. I'm sorry.
Water's fine, ma'am. Thanks.
Oh, wait a minute. We have apple juice. It's country style.
If I get to the bottom of whatever this is,
What do you want?
just to see you sweat.
And it gets too hot. You got a discipline issue with me? Write me up or suspend me.
I see that you're trying to help her. And I don't know anybody who would do that for me.
You are dangerous. I set out to know, put her on the spot. And put her in front of the gun. There's not much chance of coming out clean.
When you say that this was another big release from '05, I mean, did you know that it made $3.9 million in the box office?
It's a big release for me, Brian.
The budget was $450,000, so, it made a profit.
I think it's one of the movies that you need to know from 2005. That's what I mean when I say big.
Right. In Sundance, it won, Rian Johnson won a special jury prize for originality of vision, and he was nominated for dramatic grand jury prize. So it got some attention. It also was nominated for best first feature in Toronto for Rian Johnson. Peter Travers gave it a positive review, saying, "A spoof would have been easy. Instead, Johnson plunges off the deep end, risking ridicule by shaping this spellbinder with grace and gravitas." One of my favorite quotes: "If you got every rat in town together and said, 'Show your hands,' if any of them have actually seen the pin, you'd get a crowd full of pockets." It's good stuff. The dialogue is like
It's
so sharp.
So good.
But Rian Johnson's movies, it goes from Brick. I've never seen The Brothers Bloom. It's on my list for 2008. Then Looper, which
Great.
I like quite a bit.
Yep.
The Last Jedi, Episode 8, and then Knives Out, which is Knives Out 2 is in post-production or something, and Knives Out 3 has been announced. So it's kind of interesting how he seems poised for kind of this big career, but he hasn't actually done a lot of movies in 15, 20 years. Anyway, not that I could criticize someone for those movies in a career. So we're going to ask each other 3 questions and see if any golden takes surface. And then we'll talk about whether you would have kept this, or whether you think this should have been in the top 5.
All right, let's do it. Ben Walters, Time Out. He says, the self-consciously mannered rat-a-tat dialogue mines a neat overlap between teen slang and noir patois, both of which can be indecipherable to non-initiates, unquote. So my question is, could you follow this dialogue, or was it distracting?
I watched it late at night, so I usually keep the sound a little low.
Oh, no.
And I have subtitles on.
Oh, okay.
That helped quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Still confusing even with subtitles on, I have to say. And that did kind of diminish the experience for me, I would say. It's the kind of movie that probably would be better a second time through. A lot of movies that you try to get me to watch, I think, are better the second time through, probably. But it's kind of the originality of vision and all that is just admirable. And but yeah, did you follow it exactly the first time you watched it?
I love that the script challenges you to keep up. And even in the trailer, one of the characters says, try to keep up with me now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's because a lot of these words, some of them are made up. Some of them are very, they're in like the noir vernacular, if you're familiar with that. But I've seen this like 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah.
And I've liked it more and more and more every single time I've seen it. And I loved it this time. And I mean, maybe it's because I have seen it a few times. I know how this is going to play out, and I didn't have any trouble following it this time. But the first time, it is a little bit of having to sort of adjust to not only the words, but also the speed and the cadence.
It's not exactly on, par with like Shakespeare, but it reminded me of trying to follow like Romeo's friends, like Mercutio and his friends, trying to like, spitting out all these, puns that you don't really, it's hard to follow them, especially in a movie in dramatic form if you're not reading them. But I did feel like I was trusting the writing. So that says something, I guess. My first question to you is, I saw on Wikipedia that this has become a quote cult classic, unquote. What characteristics do you think define a cult classic?
Small budget, limited release, not any love from the Oscars, not a mainstream movie, but one that deserved more credit at the time, and then people sort of discover it later. And this checks all those boxes, right?
Yeah, passionate fan base is one thing that it said on Wikipedia, but it also seems to be favoring box office bombs, which 3.9 million box office bomb.
What was it made for, though?
Transgressive films, in some way, kind of become cult classics. But there are some big budget ones that have been suggested as a cult classic, like The Matrix. Is it a cult classic?
No.
It's too successful?
Yeah.
But the passionate fan base that can follow even a big budget movie, it's sort of like there's like people geek out over Star Trek, for example, which was not all that successful in the first couple of years. It didn't have that many original seasons.
Yeah.
But since then, it's become like a pretty huge phenomenon. Does that not qualify sort of as cult classic?
I don't really know how Star Trek originated. Maybe it was very small at the beginning, and the cult sort of, gave it that extra steam and push to get into the mainstream. But The Matrix was wide from
big
the
success,
start. Yeah, so I don't really think that applies.
I saw somewhere that Star Wars was a cult classic. Blair Witch Project. I can sort of see that one a little bit more. Anyway.
I don't know about all that. Tony Patterson, Slate, he says, like the best noirs, Brick is a triumph of attitude, and there's no arguing that its brand of deadpan cool is precisely unique. I mean, first of all, triumph of attitude, that's great.
That's a great phrase.
And precisely unique is, I think, deadpan cool. I mean, this great sentence. But is this movie all attitude? Did you feel like it was kind of just a style exercise?
No, I thought that the style made the storytelling work in addition. So I think that is what it was setting out to do. I think it succeeded, really well. The thing that actually I thought about afterward was, are you a Calvin and Hobbes fan?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Mike.
I don't know any of the stuff.
The comics. Bill Watterson.
I don't know him.
Oh my goodness. We need to have a bonus episode on Calvin and Hobbes comics. Good golly.
Maybe.
So in Calvin and Hobbes, there are some strips where Calvin's, it starts out with like he's in a hard-boiled detective story, and it's like super light and dark shadows and all this stuff, and he's like in a private eye, smoke coming up, and a dame walks in, and like all this stuff. Just like you can tell Bill Watterson, the writer, is a big fan of that stuff, just like Rian Johnson is.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the strip, usually he's a little kid again, and actually it's his mom trying to get him to clean his room.
Okay.
I felt like Brick is the first 3 panels of Calvin and Hobbes without ever doing the 4th one of the mom.
Did you think that
That's
needed
what I felt.
the 4th one?
No.
Okay,
it was fine. It was like its own interesting experiment.
Yeah.
But it was like this tone, because it's all in high school and there's no like, fedoras and, trench coats and stuff. It kept making me think like, wait a minute, this is a high school movie, but yet it's not ever telling me it's high school. It was really fascinating that it never let up on it. And I thought that was a nice experiment.
Yeah. I love the swagger.
Yeah.
And it could have failed 100 different ways, and it could have felt like a gimmick.
It's risky.
And I love the risky big swings.
Yeah,
so I love all that. But especially this time, there's something about this watch where the fact that this is a breakup movie really hit me. And it was almost like all of the style, all of the that hyper stylized dialogue and just the aesthetic of the movie, the shadow, the grit, all that stuff. It was almost like that was just another layer of protective distance between Joseph Gordon Levitt and his heartbreak. Even though the whole world operates like that, it's not just him, in his mind having a fantasy that the world is like this in order to protect himself from the grief. But I think that being a gumshoe in high school, it gives him a mission in order to work through this grief and in order to gain some type of tangible closure at the end, instead of being just another story about first love and first breakup.
I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. The actress who played Laura is Nora Zehetner. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But the more she was on the screen, the more I liked her. And the last scene where, they're on this empty football field or soccer field and they're just nose to nose talking and have this great dialogue. Fantastic. I mean, she just got better.
You're talking about the femme fatale.
Yes.
I'm talking about his first...
Emily.
Yeah,
Emily's played by Emily de Raven.
His girlfriend who breaks up with him basically
She's not even in it that much, really, but...
He's a loner and he likes to eat lunch by himself behind the cafeteria, and he thinks he's smarter than everyone else, and she wants to try out new social groups. And, in a film noir especially, it's like, not only does that mean that she's leaving you and your way of thinking, but it's like... she's being manipulated by people. Like, how could anybody actually care for her the way that I cared about her? And so in this world, it turns out he's totally right. Like, all of these people are manipulating her and they are out to get her because the world is dangerous.
A lot of twists and turns, discoveries. The plot is very tight and it's pretty good. Okay, so my second question to you is, when Brendan, played by Joseph Gordon Levitt, is getting beat up, happens a few times.
Oh, yeah.
How many punches to the face would you personally endure to meet the pin? And subset of that question is, do you think that the inconsistently bloody wounds were mistakes, or is that part of the plot somehow, or part of the aesthetic? Because sometimes you got like blood dripping and then all of a sudden it's wiped and then it comes back and he's like bloody again. And I couldn't quite figure that out.
I never
Is this the low budgetness of it, or is there...
Yeah, I'm sure that's the low budgetness.
But it seems so obvious that I wondered if
I never noticed it.
If maybe it was sort of like some of the surrealism. There's a little bit of David Lynch, and actually he's a stated influence. The pin feels very Mulholland Drive to me in the little,
there's some sort of almost supernatural force that's overseeing this world and moving things like puppets within it.
That's what it feels like.
Detached, but in control.
But how many, he just keeps taking the punches.
Yeah.
How many would you take? Would you, after one, would you be running? Or?
Honestly, I think that goes toward the breakup thing again. Like
he's depressed.
You're inflicting harm on yourself, either in order to solve this problem, or as like tribute to your former life. You know, like I'm gonna hurt myself because that was worth hurting myself for.
Or I'm already as wounded as I can get, and whatever you do to me it's not making an impact because I'm already as low as I feel like.
But I love before every single fight, he takes his glasses off and he slides them in his little pocket protector.
I didn't notice that, so he doesn't get smashed.
This movie's full of all these details. It's great. Nick Shager, Lessons of Darkness, he says, never really offers an adequate justification for its central genre transplant conceit.
Indeed.
So basically saying that this whole mixing of film noir and high school is just a gimmick. That's what I'm getting from this quote.
Why? They never do the fourth panel of Calvin and Hobbes. They never do it. Just like there's no Don Cheadle at the beginning, like in Crash, saying why we're doing this, what we're doing. We're about to crash into each other. No one ever tells you that. And I think that...
Do you need that?
No, you don't need that.
You definitely don't need that.
And I'm so glad that he didn't do it. That's what made it feel like it has some enduring, power to this movie, because it's sticking with it. It's sticking with its vision.
The guy's premise is off to start with, because traditional noirs...
The guy? Who's the guy?
Nick Shager of Lessons of Darkness.
So he gave it a negative review.
Yes. But this whole idea that you have to justify your central conceit, like why is your style, is kind of ridiculous, because the whole tradition of film noir is based off of this grit and this way of speaking and the fact that all women are dangerous and that the world's full of backstabbers, and none of that is based off of anything real. It's all made up.
It's sort of like Tarantino and Kill Bill. It's like, I love that genre. He's saying, I love that genre so much that I'm going to make an homage to that genre. And that's my justification.
Yeah.
I'm not giving a plot reason for it. I'm not giving anything.
I think that there is a world plot reason for this, though, because if you can look at high school and you can look at the social structure, and you could argue,
but you get that without anybody having to tell you.
Exactly.
High school really is the pits. People are always backstabbing me in high school,
and you
could have thrown that line in, but it
clicks. Yeah. And especially if you're a loner or you feel like a loner, those clicks could feel exclusive or dangerous. Or
it was it's a metaphor, but you can get the metaphor without being hit over the head with it.
Yeah.
This is I'm thinking of Birth, which was one of my favorite movies a couple of years back. It's basically a metaphor for grief, but no one ever tells you, and that gives it this additional power.
Yeah. The genre elements just let us see the framework that's already there in a new light, where somebody eats lunch tells you everything that you need to know about that character. That's all you need to know. And, in high school, you're losing friends and making allegiances all the time, just like in classic film noir. I think there are plenty of connections here without having any sort of explanation. But me and Nick Shager, we're going to disagree on this one.
Well, he's published on an actual website,
I guess.
That gives him Oscar
it's fine.
criticism cred. So my third question is similar to what you kind of already have asked, so we'll skip over it pretty much. But just this one note that Rian Johnson, he loved these detective novels and film noir growing up. So he decided he would make his own contribution. So it raises this whole question of creating art. How do you make a contribution to this genre, which has been done, some people would say, to death? Mm-hmm. How do you make a romantic comedy? How do you make a new Shakespeare adaptation? How do you make a new cop buddy comedy? You have to come up with a totally new...
you have to reframe it in some sort of way.
But this is what art has been doing ever since the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. You still have to, somebody kept doing cave paintings, and then someone probably made one in on a rock next to a fire instead. And they're like, what are you doing? You're supposed to do that in caves.
It's so subversive.
Yeah.
I rewatched Red Eye from 2005.
Yeah, I saw that you posted that. I haven't seen it. Wes Craven. Either.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I saw it in theater, and I liked it a lot back in the day, but I didn't really, I was thinking I'm not going to revisit it. It's fine. but I had a really good time with it.
Really?
I think it's really great. But it's interesting in that movie that he kind of builds it as a rom-com in the first act. He's using a lot of those expectations and a lot of those tropes to kind of build, okay, like Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams might get together. Oh, look, they're sitting together on the plane, except for there's a big twist. Yeah. And it's the same sort of deal, right? Like you take tropes that already exist and you just put them in a place where they're not supposed to be, and all of a sudden they look brand new.
Yep. It makes it so that only people who are familiar with those are going to totally get it without needing some extra nudging. But of the initial writing process, Rian Johnson said, "It was really amazing how all the archetypes from that detective world slid perfectly over the high school types." So, some trivia, since we have a little bit of time here. Rian Johnson did not want any of the cast to watch noir films. They're all high school age kids, pretty much. The whole cast is. So maybe they hadn't actually seen a lot of them, but he did have them watch a particular movie. See if you appreciate this.
Okay.
The Apartment.
Oh, yes.
He had them watch that movie.
Because the dialogue is very snappy.
Maybe so. I have not seen The Apartment still.
Oh, you're missing out.
I can only afford to watch 05, 06 movies right now. The movie was shot in San Clemente, which is his hometown, Rian Johnson. At the high school, which he attended. And he had current students working on the weekends to help him with the movie.
Love it.
Some of the visual cues were taken from Chinatown. The score was composed by his cousin, Nathan Johnson.
Which is great. I love the score.
The IMDb, or maybe this is a Wikipedia quote, I don't know, but the score harkens back to the style, feel, and texture of noir films. As piano, trumpet, violin, also some weird things, metallophone, tack pianos, filing cabinets, kitchen utensils, and all were recorded with one microphone on an Apple PowerBook.
Wow.
That's
and again, incredible.
He credits some of his influence to David Lynch also. So, Mike, you've been talking a lot about how good this movie is. Mm-hmm. Is this going to be in your top 5?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be in my top 5. When I watched this, it was clear. I mean, this was like shooting up. This was the last movie I watched in 2005. And like I said, I'd seen it before. Mm-hmm. But man, I love it so much. Yeah. And it seems like, what other movie from this year is as creatively risky as this movie? I just think it's one of the most creative movies of the year. And I think that it could have failed 100 different ways if Rian Johnson weren't this good. But he is, and it didn't. And the payoff is just, I think it totally works as like a cool whodunit. I think it works as sort of a genre pastiche. Not really, it's not a parody, whatever you want to call it. A take on the film noir genre, but also a modern subversion of it. Yeah. And then the fact that there's brain and heart there too. It's got it all.
This is a top 10 movie for me. I think if I rewatch it again in another year, it might kind of move up some places. We should keep some standings, that'd be interesting. But I don't think it'll make my top 5 because there's some others that I really, really like that were also kind of really unusual for me. But it probably wasn't even a top 10 movie until until that scene with Laura on the soccer field. That kind of like
that's funny.
That kind of cemented I want an emotional arc. It was mostly intellectually interesting to me for most of the movie. But somehow that started to make me feel like I cared more about the character, on a personal level. And it opens the door to me to rewatch it and allow that to kind of be part of the experience from the beginning in a way that it probably wasn't.
You're talking about the climax, the very end. Yeah. It's funny. That is kind of the one scene that I think is the weakest in the movie.
This keeps happening in these movies that we watch.
Because
you love one scene, I don't. Vice
that
versa.
Scene is also sort of a hallmark of these types of movies. You have a parlor scene at the end where somebody explains...
Reveal the whole thing.
Yeah.
I didn't love that aspect of that scene.
You have that expo dump going on there where it explains this is who did it and this is how they did it. And this movie is just moving from start to finish. The momentum is going. And that's the one time where I totally understand why he did it. It's another hat tip to the form.
Yeah.
But it does slow it down a little bit when I kind of felt like I just wanted it to race through to the end of the line.
I think this is another example where the shooting, the photography of it, eliminated those concerns for me. I wanted to freeze those frames, one by one, and just like look at them for a while because the shots are so cool. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that the actress did a really good job there. So probably not in my top 5, but I loved it and I would watch it again. So in the next episode, we're going to hear the rest of your 4 and the rest of my 4, 5, 3. I don't know how many I've claimed already, but
I know that I've said that I'm gonna keep some that I'm not gonna keep. So
we lie all the time on this show.
Yeah.
So the finale 2005 will be the next episode.
Find us at bestpicturethis.com, on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you listen. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Best Picture This. And for 16 years of golden takes, head over to Letterboxd/Mike Cavalieri.
Visit patreon.com/bestpicturethis to support the show.
Thanks to WNZF and the illustrious Mark Gilliland for producing. Also remember to please rate, review, and subscribe.
Until next time, the 8 blows or I clam. Whatever that means, I have no idea.